That joke isn't funny anymore. Available on Amazon and everywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and I am very fortunate to be joined today by a friend, a comedian, an author with a new book out called Tribalism Is Dumb, Where It Came From, How It Got So Bad, and What to Do About It. And you might recognize him because this is his second appearance. I think it might be a few years apart. His second appearance on the Lou Perez podcast. Please give it up wherever you are for the fabulous Andrew Heaton.
Hello, Lou. I am delighted to see you again. Lou, you always look so cool. Like you've got the salt and pepper beard with a stocking cap. You just look cool. Like I look like I'm going through a midlife crisis. You look effortlessly cool. I want to have that.
That is flattery. Flattery will get you everywhere with me. I appreciate that. I'm the stocking hat. It could either be I'm cool or I'm like I'm on my way to go pick up some Newports from the bodega and some formula for my baby.
Effortlessly cool. Sounds effortlessly cool.
Well, I like that jacket. That jacket
thank you
got.
All right, this is a cool jacket. Can we admit?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So I got this in Santa Fe a couple of years ago. I'd just been fired from a TV show, and I went to Santa Fe with some friends, and went to a vintage store, and I saw this for folks that are only hearing this audio. It's a leather jacket, but the shoulder pads are made out of dead ostrich, just an ostrich skin jacket, and I was like, "There's no way that would fit," and I put it on, and I was like, "Fits like a glove." How much is it? Very, very reasonable. It was like $60 or something. And so I got it, and I walked outside, and literally 3 steps from the door, this homeless guy goes, "You look great!" And I was like, "Thank you, universe. This is coming together."
That's awesome. And for those of you who are, who aren't seeing the video, I know that you are feeling the presence of that jacket right now.
Mm-hmm.
That jacket, in a way, is coming through the airwaves, and it's fitted over you as well. So it fits everyone really well.
So to layer a little bit more sartorial chatter on, Lou, I moved to the Washington, D.C. area. Before I left Austin, Texas, where I've been living these last 5 years, originally from Oklahoma, I purchased a cowboy hat. I feel like I've earned it. I've been in the Texas-Oklahoma area a combined 29 years, so I feel like I have that cultural cachet necessary. So I wear it when I take my dog on walks here in Arlington, where I've been this last month, and I do it mostly just to see how people react. Because about 1 out of 4 people go, "Cowboy hat, good morning," and about 3 out of 4 people just give me side eye. Just unrelenting side eye. And I find it really funny.
I love the idea that that's the nickname. That's your nickname now. Cowboy hat. It's not even cowboy. It's cowboy hat. You are.
I don't claim to be a cowboy, but I am wearing a cowboy hat. Yeah.
Do you do the boots? Do you have cowboy boots?
I've been doing that for a long time, and I do that for utilitarian reasons. Cowboy boots are phenomenal. They're great. So here's the thing, Lou. As a very important man, I don't have time to lace up my shoes, tie my shoes, double tie the shoes so they don't come apart in the men's room, then do it on the other foot. Who has time for that? Not me. I'm a busy man. It's like you're basically wearing an armored slipper. That's what cowboy boots are. They're an armored slipper, and as an added advantage, they give you like half an inch of height, which I'm 6 foot even. I don't really need it, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So Andrew Heaton does not pull himself up by his own bootstraps because he does not have bootstraps. He just slips right in, and he's already
right in. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
My dad. He I don't know if he wears cowboy boots anymore, but there was a time where he had a lot of cowboy boots, cowboy hats as well, and he looked good. He was a older man, like in his 50s or 60s, wearing it. The cowboy boots. It must be. I mean, I when I look at them, they don't look comfortable. So I'm worried. Like if I were to get them, they wouldn't be comfortable on my feet.
Yeah, you got to be careful because this is the mistake that a lot of guys make. There's 2 types. There's, as far as I know, there's rubber soled and there's leather soled. So probably best to go with rubber soled. That's what I do because leather soled is really more if you're like riding a horse or you're dancing, stuff that you want to be able to slip around. I don't want to be able to slip around living in an urban environment. That seems like a very bad idea. So I always get the rubber soled. But the other bit is a lot of guys will go, I'm going to buy a pair of cowboy boots. And they'll go buy a really handsome pair of cowboy boots that pinches their feet, and it looks great. And it's basically what women deal with their entire lives of, I look hot in this and it's deeply uncomfortable. And then they just never wear it, right? So you like wear it around the store for a little bit, and if you're like, this doesn't feel great, it will feel really bad after a couple of days, so don't get it. But like I tend to wear Ariots, which are pretty low cost, comfortable boots, and they're comfortable. I've never had any issue with them, but you can do that. You got to be careful. Don't get them because they're pretty. Get them because they fit well.
Yeah, and when you were growing up in Oklahoma, like were there in the way that sort of like in the 50s there were the preps and the greasers, like people who dressed, very differently and were, of different social circles. Were there like, kids who wore Nikes or Jordans and those who wore cowboy boots? Was there a split?
A little bit. I don't recall ever seeing kids wear cowboy boots to school. I think cowboy boots for growing kids is probably not super common. In that if you are paying, I don't know how much kids' boots cost, but they're probably not worth it because you're going to be outgrowing them pretty quick. I don't remember ever seeing cowboy boots in middle school or high school. There was a kind of cultural divide because I grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is right on the periphery of the suburbs. So like we were not in city limits, but we were in the Edmond postal code, and we were like, I don't know, like 10 minutes from a Walmart, 5 minutes from a Walmart, maybe 30 minutes from a mall. So it's not like we were out in the country. But if you drove north any amount from us, you were in the country. Like we were on the edge of what delineated the country from the suburbs. And the school district reflected that, where Deer Creek, where I went before I got there, had been like a small rural school, probably like 50 kids per class. Everybody's dad was a farmer. And then when my dad's a judge, when we moved out there, there was the sudden onslaught of like, my dad's a dentist. So there was kind of a socioeconomic split between the old farmer kids and the incoming suburban professional kids. I don't remember it being a point of contention, but you could still see kind of a little bit of that delineation there as I was coming in.
Wow. Yeah. I've known you for all these years. I had no idea that your dad was a judge. Was he like a criminal court, or was it civil court? What kind of judge was he?
Hanging Judge Joe is a federal district court or federal district judge in the 10th Circuit, the most handsome circuit of the United States judiciary. So he got appointed as a judge back during the Bush years. So he's a federal judge at the district level, and so that means that he does both criminal and civil cases. And so, just kind of all of the above. And then, but they have to be federal. So, like we suddenly get rapidly out of my pay grade because it has to qualify as federal, which means that there's lots of things that involve either across state lines, a lot of stuff involving Native Americans, because sometimes that will be constituted under federal law. And then all sorts of like, this is a federal law as opposed to a state law, that kind of thing. But I grew up, I grew up with judges as my dad's friends. So it's this kind of, I like hanging out with attorneys because I'm fairly unflappable around judges. And they didn't
wear their robes around you, did they?
No. That's the cool thing, right? Because I'm not an attorney. So I don't have any, there's no threat that I'm going to have to come perform my services as an attorney in your court. That's never going to happen. And if I, for some reason, decide to become an attorney, you'll probably be retired by the time I get my law degree. So it's just not, so like, I totally get why lawyers are freaked out by judges. But from my experience, they're guys my dad barbecues with. No, they didn't wear they didn't wear robes. The two here, I'm going to pass on the main thing I learned from judges. If anybody wants to get like a leg up in this, judges get really irritated with overly flowery language designed to make you sound smart. It pisses them off because by the time you become a judge, you're smart. You don't need anybody else to confirm. Like literally, the president and the Senate have confirmed you're smart enough to be a judge, so you don't have to speak Latin at that point. So when lawyers like he harassed, harangued, irritated, like they're just throwing in synonyms, like the judge will be like, why are you doing this? Just speak plain language. Just speak plain English. Like, and so I find that that's a kind of a bugaboo that they have.
Yeah. So my dad was a butcher, and same thing. Well, you said your dad's nickname was Hangin'?
I call him Hanging Judge Joe.
Okay. Because I would love to hear that congressional, hearing. It's like, so hanging. What do you?
Don't worry. No. It's not a crime thing. It's a testicles reference. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah.
That's why the robe is so, it's so low. In order to. So like growing up, I imagine, like, it was probably tough to bullshit your dad, right? It was probably tough. Like, I don't know if you even attempted to, equivocate or, or outright lie,
Yeah, I think I've got a theory. I don't know. You've got kids, do you not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would like to have children at some point, but I don't have them now. I look at I think the childhood rearing experience that I had two different factors, maybe three different factors that made me not made me disinclined to be in situations where I was going to bullshit my dad anyway. I think that if you're a kind of ornery kid like I was, they just break your will, which is what happened. I would do the thing I wasn't supposed to do. I would break the window. I'd go in the yard and I'd stand defiantly in the middle. They'd be like, "All right, you're grounded for 2 weeks." And so I kind of learned oh, don't do this stuff, right? Whereas my brother, who was less ornery, I would jump into the don't go in the pool, and I would jump in and then I'd get in trouble. And Adam would dip his toe in and go, "Well, am I really in the pool?" And it was harder to come down on him. It was harder to get mad at him. So he, I think, was better at that. But then the other two things are, when I was I don't know, probably 15 or 16, that's when Dad was up for a judgeship. So I got through middle school and half of high school when Dad was an attorney. He was a prosecuting attorney, and the federal, what do you call it? The federal equivalent of the DA. But he wasn't a judge yet. And when he was up for nomination, my parents sat me down for a family meeting where they were very serious. And they were like, "Your dad's up for a judgeship. This will be scrutinized by the Senate and the press. So you should know that if you get arrested for drunk driving, it will derail your father's career ambitions and bring shame upon our family." It was just a very clear, you don't get to fuck around. And it was and I was like, "Okay, granted, thank you, noted." I wasn't planning to drive drunk, but I'll note that. And then I as a final bit, I suspect that for kids that are, I don't know, the children of law enforcement or government or pastors, I think you either become a rebel or the Vichy regime. You either fight the man as hard as you can, or you go but the man is the guy that lets me play chess during class. I skipped class. I'm friends with the principal. I went the Vichy regime route. I went. Oh, okay. I apparently I get along with authority figures.
Yeah. Oh man. Are there were your dad's hearings taped? Is there recordings of him being answering questions and that sort of thing?
Gosh, I don't know. I've never looked into that. I'll say what I would love to do is I would really, really love to watch him preside over a naturalization ceremony. They do them twice a year or 3 times a year. I don't remember the exact schedule. And the judges alternate. I would love to watch my dad do one of those, just because one of my favorite things about being an American, Lou, is that if you become an American, you're equally American to everybody else. I spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom, and if I were to move to Scotland and invest myself there, I could be legally British, but I would never be Scottish. And I could same thing. I could be in Britain, and I could be legal, or in England, and I'd be legally British, but I'd never really be English. But over here though, I'm from Oklahoma. I'm wearing cowboy boots. My mom had a foreign exchange student when she was in college, Hitu. We're equally American. We're 100% equally American. I really, really like that. I think it's a super cool thing about our country, and I would love to watch my dad preside over one of those.
Yeah, my dad became a citizen probably, I think it's well over 10 years now. He's from Argentina, an immigrant from Argentina, and one of his happiest moments was he was driving, and there was I think a woman cut him off or something there was some little traffic incident, and they both stopped. And the woman, who had a very thick accent, she was obviously a foreigner as well, screamed out the window, "You American pig!" And it was one of the happiest days of my dad. If you heard my dad has a really thick accent, but he's like, "I've made it. I'm an American."
Nice. Congratulations to him. Wait, can I ask a question? So you've got family in Argentina then, yeah?
Yeah, so I have cousins and some aunts. Yeah.
All right, so I really want to go down to Argentina for multiple reasons. I'm interested in Malay, but it's deeper than that. So you look at Chile, as I understand it. Chile is like functionally the Incan people that were conquered by Spaniards, and then the Spaniards left. But there's this sort of underlying ethno-cultural group there that speaks Spanish and is Catholic. And you look at like a lot of Latin America, like you go to the Yucatan, like the Mayans never went away. There's about 7 million Mayans around today. They're in the Yucatan and El Salvador and Honduras, but they speak Spanish as well. But then you look at Argentina, and I'm sure that there are pre-existing groups that are a part of the mix there, but Argentina had a much more, this is a German town, this is an Italian town, this is a Spanish town.
Yeah.
And it almost looks to me like a South American version of what the United States did, because we've got the same phenomenon. You go to Pennsylvania and they're like, oh, that's a Dutch town. That over there, that's a German town. And I want to see what that looks like in another country's context, where there are just different pockets of population that came in. I'm very curious. Does it feel kind of like America? I know Argentinians and South Americans view each other as very distinct groups. Like there's, I know, Lou, I know we're supposed to say Latinx now. So when referring to you and your people, I'll be sure to say Latinx. My experience with the Latinx community is that there are Hispanic people, and also Cubans and Argentinians are completely different. And then you get into it, and it's like not only that everybody's kind of different, but like those ones are particularly different.
Yeah. And we saw that with the discussion of this election. Oh my God, I can't believe that Latinos voted for Trump and these numbers and all. It's like, yeah, because they're not monolithic. Right. It's like Mexicans are different from Cubans and are different from
this.
Puerto
this
Ricans,
is a really big problem with the Democratic Party. Like, so for folks listening at home, I'm an independent. I don't have a political party. I never know how I'm going to vote election to election. Like most independents are Republicans or Democrats that are in protest. That's most independents, are reliably one team or the other. Maybe they'll switch it, but they're probably going to vote Republican or Democrat. But there's something about the party they don't like. I'm an actual capital I independent. I don't know election to election how I'm going to vote, and I always vote for multiple parties on the ballot. And one of the big problems I see with the Democratic Party is there's just been this mindset of like, well, the blacks think one way, and they will vote Democrat because the Republicans are evil. They have no other option. They are ethnic hostages to our party. And I'm like, that does not strike me as a real good electoral strategy of you are ethnic hostages to whatever we do because the other party's so evil. I'm like, I don't, something tells me that's not going to work out long term. And you saw that with well, pretty much every ethnicity, but like specifically with Hispanic voters in 2024 of like, yeah, why did you think this would be permanent? There's a reason that George W. Bush wanted to bring Hispanics into the conservative coalition, where he's like, so they're hard-working family people. They like working and they have big families. They could be Republicans. Like, he's right. Like, there's a lot of overlap there. And also just, we don't do that with white people. We're not like, hey, white people all vote the exact same way. No, like a lot of the culture war bullshit going on is inter-party, upper middle class white people who went to elite institution Civil War shit. Like, they're not monolithic. So why would everybody else be monolithic?
Yeah, or there was the just the I don't even know, what would you call it, a hoax? The bullshit about like women are really scared to tell their husbands how they're going to vote. Like women who are going to vote for Kamala are keeping it secret from their conservative husbands. It's like, no, that actually didn't pan out. It's that that kind of like fear mongering that when anyone who's in like an actual relationship or knows people, you're like, oh no, that's not real.
Yeah. Well, okay. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I lived in New York for about 5 years. So Lou and I overlapped while I was in town, and then I moved down to Austin, Texas. I'm now in the D.C. area. So I'm from Oklahoma, which is a deep red state, but I've spent most of my adult life living in bright blue cities, and that's fine, by the way. I do not make friends based, or I should say, I don't have litmus tests for whether you're politically capable of being my friend. I care about your character. I care about your intentions. The policy portfolio you have to manifest those intentions is not part of my judgment of you as a person. I might think you're stupid in terms of your voting, but I'm interested in what you're trying to do. So, like, I don't think Bernie Sanders' economy would work, but, like, I appreciate he's trying to help poor people. I don't think he would, but it's not because he hates poor people, right? So that's where I'm at. That being said, though, I've lived in these bright blue cities for years, and my experience has been that when Republicans disagree with me, when conservatives disagree with me, they tend to think that I am naive. They tend to think that the problem is that I have an overly rosy or academic view of the world and that it is silly. When the progressives disagree with me, there's a much higher propensity to think it's because I'm evil, that I am either selfish or I'm racist. So this has been my experience anecdotally. The thing that I'm trying to work out is, let's say that it had been reversed, and I'm from a blue city and I live in a rural red county. Would it be the other way around? I guess my question is it just if you're in a monolithic environment, people are dicks because all the Republicans I'm meeting are in big blue cities? Or is it that there's something specific to the progressives? And I think it's the monolithic thing. I think that's just human nature, and it's a effect of, are you a majority that can dick people around? But I don't know. This has been my experience. I'm curious what your experience has been, Lou.
Yeah. So on election night, I was on my my buddy Hatem's podcast. You've been on.
Oh yeah, Comedy Cellar. Yeah, I went on that too. I must have got on earlier or later than you. Yeah, I love Hatem.
Okay, cool.
And Noam's great.
Yeah, and I wish I had known, because he was Hatem was doing kind of like this marathon broadcast during the on election night, and I was like, damn, I wish I'd gotten there earlier, because fortunately I got on when Colin Quinn was a guest, so I got to talk to Colin Quinn, and he's brilliant and great. And
wait, who's that old bald comedian that like slept with a bunch of prostitutes? He's kind of famous for it. Who am I thinking of? Oh, it'll come to me in a minute. Huh?
I don't know. I don't know, but as far as I know, not Colin Quinn.
It wasn't Colin Quinn,
who still has great head of hair.
Right. Okay, nice. Yeah.
But one of the guests was an attorney named Michel Paradis, and I had been on other episodes with Michel, and he's another great guest and an author, historian, and one of the things that he pointed out when it comes to New York is like, look, you are dealing with a one party city. You're dealing, and when that happens, it's sort of like it's very easy to get these really, if you lack of a better word, radicals within the party, because they're all playing within the same party. There is no real hope for change. It's like, who are you voting for? It's okay.
Plus if you're in a monolithic vacuum chamber environment, you're not getting stress tested for stupid shit. And this applies to everybody. Like if you had 100 me's in a room, we would say stupid shit because nobody would be calling out our blind spots. Like I was in Portland, Oregon a few years ago, and I overheard I really like Portland, by the way. I think it's a cool city. I overheard a guy go, well, we all want an idealist like Marianne Williamson, but maybe we need a pragmatist like Bernie Sanders. And I was like, right. I like that in your mind. Right? In your mind, Bernie Sanders is the pragmatic, gritty realist, and that's the spec. But again, in Portland, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that there's something to that. I think it's probably the monolithic thing. But it's just, I don't know. We're living in the wake of the 2024 election, and so I'm watching everybody again react to the Trump victory, and it freaks me out because I literally just wrote a book called Tribalism Is Dumb. Like I've thought about this a lot.
Right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And like I said, I don't discount friends based on how they vote. I suppose if somebody went, I am voting for this Nazi candidate because I hate the Jews, maybe that would cross the line for me. Although even then, I gotta say, I'm not sure that the world would be better for me cutting them out of my life, because then that off-ramp for them to come out of anti-Semitism would be cut off.
You also might want to keep an eye out on them. I don't know. From where I don't see cutting people off as typically a good thing. Have you had Daryl Davis on your show by chance? He'd be a great interview if you've not. No, I haven't had him. But I am familiar with him. Yeah,
you're familiar. I had him on. So if he made a lot of rounds in social media a few years ago. But Daryl Davis, for anybody unfamiliar, is a black jazz musician that kind of as a hobby befriends Klansmen. And I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he was describing the story of befriending the Grand Dragon of the Maryland KKK and how that guy eventually quit the KKK because he was good friends with Daryl. And I was like, it's a heartwarming story. What would have happened if he didn't quit the KKK? And Daryl went, well, I would have stayed friends with him. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, it wasn't a trick. I wasn't being friends with him to trick him. Like, I liked him. I genuinely liked him as a person. I thought that there was some really good stuff there. There were heinous, heinous beliefs that he had, and I didn't like them or want them to go on. But, like, no, I genuinely liked him as a guy. And I think to that conversation all the time. If a black guy can be friends with a Klansman, I can be friends with somebody that voted for Trump or Kamala Harris. Like, that is not a huge stretch for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put those in the same
But a lot of people would, though. I'm getting these emails from people that I like and respect, their newsletters and stuff, where they're saying, don't believe any of this civility nonsense. If somebody in your life voted for Trump, cut him out like a cancer. And I'm like, what? Right. Like, why? Why would you? I don't know. I think it's puerile, and I think it's also really bad electoral strategy.
Yeah, I might have a little bit of a different take on Daryl, and I watched I watched a documentary about him, and there was a scene where he sat down with some local activists, I believe in Baltimore, local African American activists, and one of the guys said, I think the word that he used was, he's like, "Is this like a fetish for you?" In a way, and I think it upset Daryl, and they went back and forth, and I heard through the grapevine that there were regrets on both sides on how that came out of the conversation. But when I do look at it, I do see that I would say, yeah, there seems to come a little bit of a fetish there, because, you know, you look at all the years that he's been doing this, say he's been doing it for 30 years and he's turned, 30 grand wizards around. It's like, when I think about the amount of time that could have been spent in other endeavors helping communities, yeah, I could see someone making the argument that, there may have been better things to do than turning around Klansmen, especially at a point in time when the Klan is kind of it's broken up, it's kind of powerless.
It's like a very racist Elks Lodge. It's just not big anymore.
They're not. Thankfully, they're not. Taking part in violence like they used to. I know that there was in Charlottesville there were the unfortunate death of that woman, but I don't know how much of that was KKK.
They're not having a million-man march down Pennsylvania Avenue like they did in the 60s or whatever it was. Yeah,
where I think maybe someone like Daryl, who plays a mean boogie woogie on the piano, might have a more positive effect, say bringing music to inner city kids or something like that.
That's a really interesting take, because you're going with time allocation as opposed to like a moral binary of is it good or evil. I like that approach. It could be. All I will add is that so in the book I talk about motivated reasoning a fair amount. Or at least there's a chapter on motivated reasoning. For people unfamiliar with the term, motivated reasoning is a fairly well-established concept in psychology that we now have, where human beings make a emotional decision, and then we after the fact we justify it to ourselves. We're not so much a rational species as a rationalizing species. Our rational faculty, which I'm a big fan of. I'm doing funny videos with reason. Yay, rationalism. Rationalism is a tool. It is the handmaid of our desires. Our emotions lead the way they make the decisions. And when you get into what do most people want, a really, really looming big thing that everybody wants is to avoid social censor and to have status and community within their tribe, right? So if there's some opinion that is odious that's going to kick me out of my tribe, my brain is going to just rewire itself to not even think about it, because from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes way more sense to believe that the world is flat if everybody in your tribe really cares that the world is flat and it means that you get food and security and mates than it is for you to be technically correct and exiled from your tribe. The reason I bring all of this up is in terms of how to get around motivated reasoning, having a kind of social off-ramp seems to be a big feature of getting people out of weird ideas. There's a guy, his name is escaping me, David McDaniel, who I quote in the book, forgive me, my brain is forgetting this particular name, but he wrote a book on people that are 9/11 truthers, that believe that it was a conspiracy for the Twin Towers to fall, et cetera, et cetera. And he followed them around, and one of the people ended up turning around when I'm not a 9/11 truther, and it had nothing to do with IQ. It had nothing to do with the arguments that were being waged, because they were all exposed to the same arguments. The difference between that guy and the other people was the 9/11 truthers that remained in that particular area mentally had no other friends outside of that particular group. So, like, if they were to go, I don't think George W. Bush coordinated all of this. They would lose all of their friends. Whereas this other guy had other friends that were outside of that, and so he kind of subconsciously knew, if I change my opinion on this, I'm not cut off. It'd sort of be like somebody who's Mormon or some religion that is like a very potent social group. If that's your whole social life, you have really strong impulses to not think the thing that gets you kicked out. But if you've got friends that are outside of it, your brain can allow you to go, oh, maybe I will explore this idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I experienced that for not for the first time, but I guess for the first time in a while on election night, and Hatem was doing the live stream, and then at the same night, the Free Press and I think Reason were doing like a joint kind of election day party in the
Faber
city
or something. Yeah, there's some office they've got or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I Noam Dworman I was one of his guests there, and it was cool. And you know this, and you can attest to this. Like, in this deep blue city of New York City, there is like kind of a hangout of people who are heterodox thinkers or just being right of center, who are able to get together and who believe all sorts of things and literally get together for debates like the Soho Forum and that sort of thing. And excuse me. So the Free Press was doing was live streaming all these interviews, and at one point, one of the guests was Dr. Phil, and it was via satellite or Zoom or whatever it was, and I was hanging outside the room, like where it was happening, and I was with Jim Epstein. He was a great guy. He's at Reason. And we were chatting, and then this couple came out. A couple, they're probably like in their late 50s, and I made the joke like, "Oh, did they kick you out?" And then the guy who was very tall. I don't know if he's wearing cowboy boots. I think he was just naturally like 6'4". He said, "No, we kicked ourselves out." And I was like, "Oh, what happened?" He's like, "That piece of shit they're interviewing. I can't believe that they're even talking to that guy, Dr. Phil." He's talking about, right? And it's like, oh, why? What's going on? He's like, he doesn't care about our daughters. He doesn't care about these young girls. And the guy was pretty shit faced. Both he and his wife, and their problem seemed to be that Dr. Phil, I guess, either was pro-life or
too friendly with Trump. I think he
too friendly with Trump, endorsed him, or agreed with the overturning Roe v. Wade or whatever. And they were so upset about that he was even being interviewed on this program. And at one point, when things died down, I was showing them pictures of my kids, and they would show me pictures of their kids, and it was kind of nice. And then the woman asked, "Well, what would you do?" It's like, I know you don't have daughters, but when your boys grow up, and if they go and get a girl pregnant, what are you gonna do? And I was like, I don't know, we'll take care of the baby. What? Like, yeah, well, we'll take care of the baby. He's like, are you serious? Well, are you serious? Like, and they had never heard that possibility before, that I would say, like, yeah, I mean, if my son's quote unquote fuck up and get a girl pregnant, we would offer to care for the baby. And they were like looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, well, I'm pro-life. They're like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And they started walking away. And then the woman said something about, her daughter, what's so important to her is Gaza, right? Or whatever. And then I said to him, kind of just like, to kind of, needle them a little bit. I'm like, well, I'm a Zionist too. They're like, oh God. And then they just stormed out. And it was something that I left out.
I bet they had a great evening over the course.
Yeah, they had a great evening. Well, what was really funny was the guy, something that I left out when he was describing Dr. Phil. He was like this rich, wealthy, white man doesn't care about our daughters, right? And we were at a party in Soho, right? It was an entire floor. That was
all working class people in overalls. They just came in from the factory floor.
And part of it was, and I was wondering, what the hell are these people doing here? Because you're at an event for the free press and Reason and all these heterodox thinkers, like I said, before. Turns out they live downstairs, right? So these very rich, very wealthy people, very white, are throwing those, those details as jabs against Dr. Phil, right? And what was so funny to me was, it was like, wow, these people exist. These people have never, ever had an interaction with someone who disagrees with them on anything. Yep. That it was just mind blowing for them that they could put out, that they could say, well, what if your teenage son got a girl pregnant? What would you do? It's like, well, yeah, we'd raise the baby.
I
like that was so beyond.
I experienced that a few times when I was in New York City, where I would, and like, again, I'm not a Republican, right. But I would talk. I used to go to Bluegrass Night out in Astoria. I lived in Astoria for a bit. Really fun Bluegrass Night at an Irish bar. And I was talking to a lady, and she's like, well, you know what the Republicans, we were talking about healthcare, and she, well, you know what the Republicans want. And I was like, what do they want? And she's like, they want poor people to die in the streets. That's their goal, is they want the poor people to die. And I was like, even assuming that they're evil, wouldn't they want to make money off the poor people? Like, why would they, like, they're doing it for
terrible
sport?
Investment.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this just doesn't make any sense. I was like, and it became apparent over the conversation, like, she'd never met a Republican, or at least never had an interaction with him. So this is great, Lou. This is the exact kind of reason that I wrote my book, Tribalism Is Dumb. So I'm going to make one hard pitch to your listeners, and then we can pivot back in.
I love it.
Lou heads, Ludites. What do we call your fans? What are your Louvers? Okay, thank you. Louvers. Listen to Lord Uncle Heaton for a minute. If any of this conversation is resonating with you, of why are people such close-minded dickheads when it comes to politics, this is exactly why I wrote my book, Tribalism Is Dumb. I began writing it in the wake of the 2016 election because I was mystified and frankly quite hurt at how people were reacting to me as a guy that voted for Gary Johnson. Like, I didn't like Trump, but I voted for Gary Johnson because I lived in New York City and I knew how the electoral votes for New York were going to go. And I was like, why is everybody being such a dick to me? I'm not doing this. I became fascinated with, why are people getting gripped by tribalism? Why has politics become so much worse? So the first third of the book is making the evolutionary case for where this comes from, why we have these groupish instincts, why we have this compulsion to form competitive groups and proactively find other groups to hate. The second third of the book is, well, why did it get bad? Like, if it's innate to us, what changed? What is altered in our zeitgeist to where it's gotten worse in our lifetime? The third bit is, what do we do about it? Which brings me back to the conversation that you were having, Lou, with your two new insufferable rich white friends from Soho. At the back of the book, I have a chapter on just how to cope with people that are partisans. Right. So this could be strangers, this could be your overbearing uncle, this could be your shrill niece, could be anybody, right? Two of the concepts that I'll give for free to people listening to this program right now. One is called Hanlon's razor, which I wish were more proliferate in our society right now. But everybody knows Occam's razor, that the simplest explanation is the most likely explanation. It's kind of a best practice. Hanlon's razor is similar to this, and Hanlon's razor is, do not attribute to malice or conspiracy that which can be explained by incompetency or sloth. So when you're looking at a situation and you're not entirely sure, if your options are someone's an idiot and they screwed up on this, or they're lazy, versus a mastermind is doing this as a form of 4D chess, err on the side of incompetency, and it honestly makes understanding politics much easier. And then the other bit that's very pertinent to your situation, Lou, or the situation where you were talking to these people, is just called the charitable principle. The charitable principle is a long-standing philosophical precept when you're having philosophy conversations, where when you're talking to somebody, where you're reading them, and there's ambiguity in something they said, err on the side of intelligence and goodness. Like, if there's some amount of ambiguity of, this person said something that, like, maybe if you turn your head and squint, could be anti-Semitic. Should I assume they are an anti-Semite, or should I assume they're not an anti-Semite? Assume they're not. Just in general, when you're approaching people, give them the benefit of the doubt when there's ambiguity. And those folks are, I think, are a really good example of that. Of I'm a very uncomfortable, squeamish pro-choice, Lou. That's where I'm at. So I'm pro-choice, but I don't know. At some point, it's a baby. I don't know where it is. It makes me very uncomfortable. I would
Right.
like I don't know. I'm broadly pro-choice, right? That being said, though, like I grew up in Oklahoma. I used to be pro-life, and
I'm just stopping the camera just for a second. Keep going. Sorry.
Sure. Are you? Oh, I was about
Yeah,
to
just
make it.
my little guys just came in. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One second.
Sure, fine.
Squeamish, pro-choice.
Right, yeah. But like I'm from Oklahoma. I lived in Texas for 5 years. I've got lots of pro-life friends, and I can articulate that position. I understand it. From a policy perspective, I'm like I don't think it's a good idea. But like none of the pro-life friends I have, like when you get drunk with them, like and there are no cameras, like off camera, they're like, I just really want to oppress women. Like I'm just, deep down, I guess I'm a misogynist and I just really want to control women. And I'm like, I don't like everybody I've ever spoken to is like, I literally think it's a baby. I literally
Right.
think it's a baby. And I don't think killing babies is right. That's like, for me, like I'm an agnostic. I don't think souls exist. So like when it's a zygote, I don't think it's a kid. But if you're religious and you're like, yes, it has a soul, that is the logical the logical chain of events to go. I think I think that embryos have souls. Therefore, like, but there's a good faith understanding and a bad faith understanding. And the bad faith understanding is the perspective that you are articulating is a lie, and it's motivated by something heinous that even you don't know. That you are either lying to me or you're lying to yourself, and I don't think it's a useful construct when you're interacting with people, and I think it's usually wrong, and it's because people are coming out of these echo chambers.
Yeah, and something that I realized about myself as well, and I think when you discussed is it motivational reasoning? Is that what
Motivated reasoning? Yeah.
Motivated reasoning. There are some things that, and I would probably put my pro-life stance in the same category. I don't think I could necessarily persuade anybody with, arguments. To me, for lack of this is going to be like, maybe this will come off as like undercutting how serious I take the subject, but it's icky to me, and it's sort of like I might not be able to express how icky it is and how uncomfortable it is and what's in my mind, like what I'm envisioning about this, just to persuade somebody. There are, definitely people out there who would do a better job of it. But yeah, I sort of, understanding my, my own limitations and how much of, my view of the world comes down to an emotional response.
Right. Well, and this gets into the tribalism stuff. This is in part 3 of my book of like when you're interacting with people. So, right now we're kind of at peak tribalism, right before the election, like the day before the election. That's probably peak tribalism. But we're going to be like very partisan for the next few months, and we are flooded right now with what I call teeter-totter thinking. Trademark Andrew Heaton. Teeter-totter thinking is if Lou and I are engaged in teeter-totter thinking, we're having a conversation. If I say something nice about Donald Trump, it must mean that I'm saying something negative about Joe Biden. Or conversely, if I'm saying something negative about George W. Bush, I must be implying that Obama is good. So you'll hear people like, George W. Bush got us into Iraq, horrible idea. Well, Obama also droned a bunch of people. And it's like, well, okay, maybe they both suck. Or maybe they're like, but it's this sort of idea that everything is a red-blue dynamic, that everything in the universe is ultimately a zero-sum game between red and blue. People get really sucked into that, and the way to countermand that, one of the methods of countermanding that, I quote him in the book. I've hung out with Peter Boghossian a couple of times.
Peter's great.
When I'm talking to people, I never lie about this because I don't want to manipulate anybody. But the good news is I like most people. I think most people are actually pretty decent. If we're getting into an argument, I will try to say at some point, like, I can tell it's important to you to help people, or I can tell it's important to you to be a good person. And what I'm trying to do is communicate this conversation that we're having about the border wall is not a referendum on you as a person. I've already judged you as a pretty good person. So like regardless of where this conversation goes, you're fine. This is an abstract thing unrelated to you, and I'm trying to break that. You are a warrior for red or blue team, and you must defend whatever they do, even if it's a stupid idea, because the honor of your tribe. Look, I'm not questioning your loyalty to your tribe, but like, can we talk about this idea less as a cosmic battle between two dueling religions and more as a policy objective? And like, maybe I'm wrong. I'd like you to tell me if I am.
Yeah.
But trying to kind of break that down. I think a part of this, Lou, like I don't know if you're religious or not, but I think part of this, and I say this as an agnostic, is that there's been this collapse in organized religion in the United States the last few years, and I think a tremendous amount of people that have very religious personality types that are built around dogma and heresy just became political. Like they didn't become secular, they became political. And politics is the worst ersatz religion you could pick. I can think of nothing worse to replace religion with than politics. It'd be so much better to get into Star Wars or Star Trek or the Big Bang Theory, whatever you want. Something not predicated on defeating the other team. But you like politics, you got to defeat the other guy. So I think a lot of that, like being able to like kind of talk to people in such a way as to disengage that element in their mind of you are not on the hook to defend your religion. When we talk about this, we're having a conversation about something, and I'm going to get vulnerable with you, and I'm going to invite you to come join me, and let's avoid this kind of reflexive bear trap of I have to defend red team or blue team against all incursions.
Yeah. Well, even just think about it. The idea that, with red team and blue team, that, you could say, well, our team has fewer pedophiles. Yeah. It's like, all right. Okay. Yeah. That's, I guess that's something to brag about,
Yeah. And that, like, that's like, it's bad. It's probably a logical fallacy of some kind. And that, like, look okay, there's what, 340 million Americans, something like that, 370 million things. Let's say 340 million, right?
Right.
The amount of people that are registered in the Republican and Democratic parties are like 70 million each or so. In a group of 70 million people, you're going to have pedophiles. You're going to 70 million is a really big number. 70 million is considerably larger than most European countries, right? So like if you have 70 million people, the bottom 10% are going to be shitbags. Absolutely. There's going to be people at the bottom 10%, if we're assessing people on quality of human beings, that are stupid, selfish, mean cheats. That's going to happen, right? So being able to go, there's a septic tank to your house is not helpful. Of course there's a septic tank to your house. Like when you're interacting with people, what I try to do is when I talk about Republicans and Democrats, I try to picture the top 10%. Because I've met plenty of very smart, kind Republicans and Democrats. I'm friends with people that are Republicans and Democrats, and I try to picture them, because what a lot of the time we do is we summon the worst elements of the other. We look at whatever group we identify with, and we go, well, it's kind of like you have one good game of golf, and you're like, that's my standard. I always do like that. I always do that well now forever. And if I do poorly, that's an aberration. And we kind of create this artifice in our minds of, well, our group, okay, that guy that, okay, technically Ted Kennedy ran a woman into a lake and she died, but that's an exception. That's really Republican behavior if you think about it. We don't really do that as a rule. So there's this propensity to look at the worst of the other party and assume that that's normal. It's part of in-group, out-group thinking. I'm talking about this a lot in the book. In-group, out-group thinking is usually oriented around the following paradigm. Our group, whatever it is, your fraternity, your political party, your church, whatever the Elks Lodge, whatever your group is, because we as human beings are able to look around our group and see all of the fault lines and all of the nuance, we go, gosh, our group is this ragtag group of miscreants. It's amazing we can even hold our group together because we have such strong personality types. We can barely do it. The other team, though, Jesus Christ, they are arm in arm. They're myrmidons, they're monolithic, and they're ruthless. They're ruthless, and they're drilling right now, and they're going to kill us because they all think the same way, and they all fall into line. This is how everybody thinks of the outgroup. The outgroup is always monolithic, competent, and much less individualistic because you can't see it. You just see the Chinese or the Hispanics or the Republicans or the Democrats or whatever.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I am incredibly racist with the Chinese. So all I see are just dark-haired people, which I would actually be. Yeah, I'm kind of correct on that one.
How dare you, sir? There are over eight blonde Chinese people out of that billion that you're not taking into account.
With the tribalism, how do you think it impacts, like, dating and coupling and that sort of thing? A little while back, I did a video with Fire with a little interview with Ricky Schlott, who is an author and a columnist at the New York Post, and she was discussing.
She just co-authored a book with Greg Lukianoff, right?
Yeah. The something of the American mind, not the coddling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
we should know this. I interviewed Greg. I should know this.
Yeah.
But it's about the dumbing down of
Yeah, something like that. And she was talking about just how difficult it is dating across political lines, and I guess I'm in a different position because I'm married. I've been with my wife we've been dating and married for 11 years. And I mean, I remember when we met online dating, and it was great, and I loved online dating. Maybe because I was a 30-year-old guy, and it was just
you're hot, and you're confident. Good job, Lou.
I was hot and confident back then. But what is it? What's it like now, especially since the tribalism is just at a point that maybe we've never seen before.
Horrible is the short answer to that. That was, I think, probably the subconscious onus for writing this book, because as I said, I started writing this in 2017, and did it in the wake of the Trump victory. And again, to put the cards on the table so people know where I'm coming from, I am a independent, I lean libertarian, and I've got a fairly moderate temperament to me. And I'm very much a Mr. Rogers, let's all be friends type guy. And also was assiduously anti-Trump back in the day. Now, I'm still not a Trump guy, but I'm a lot less full-throated about it than I was in 2017, where left Fox because I didn't want to work there during the Trump years. I got fired from a television show a week after I endorsed impeaching President Trump. I'm not you look at my record and you're like,
wow.
He has made some significant career moves. And noting this, that I left a primetime television writing job that had a lot of upward mobility to it. If I had renamed my original program "Drinking Liberal Tears with Andrew Heaton," I'd probably be pulling $500,000 right now. Noting all of that, the attitude in New York City explicitly was, "Are you a progressive Democrat? No. Well, you're kind of a fascist. You should die alone. Hang yourself." I mean, it was bad. I mean, it was honestly one of the reasons I left New York City was I would like to get married and have kids. My goal is to be an older, crappier version of Lou Perez at some point in my life. I just want to follow in your footsteps, Lou. So I would
that's a pretty easy. I think you'll hit that pretty easily. So
thanks. So I'd like to get married. I'd like to have kids. This is still a life goal for me. It became apparent. I was New York City, this just didn't going to happen. I went on multiple dates, and I went on multiple dates with people, and just for a year, it was just a solid year where the attitude was, no, you're it felt to me very much 100 years ago of you're a Catholic, I'm a Protestant, that's it, we can't do it. And I'd be but don't we both believe in Jesus? No, it doesn't matter. You're evil, you're a heretic. Yeah, it's really bad. I don't think it's doing anybody any favors. I growing up in Oklahoma, Lou, I was surprised to find out that Oklahoma, and I'll note, all 77 counties in Oklahoma in this last election voted for Donald Trump. In the previous election, it was 74 out of 77. Oklahoma's a reliably conservative state. I was surprised to learn that most of my relatives, my older relatives, who are very conservative, were Democrats. And that made sense back in the day. One, there used to be conservative Democrats. But on top of that, when I talked to them, it just wasn't a big part of their life. With their party registration wasn't a big part of their life. The things that were core to their identity were religion. I am a father. I am a Methodist. Maybe geography. I'm from Oklahoma, or I'm from Western Oklahoma, unlike those mouth breathers in Eastern Oklahoma. But the core, but the political party, it was oh yeah, well, the Democrats ran the show in Oklahoma when I was growing up. So if you wanted any say at all, you just became a Democrat. For them, it was just this kind of this is a bureaucratic filing thing that becomes important every 2 years. But it's not do you shop at Whole Foods or do you shop at Safeway? It's just not a thing to me. That's really changed, where people their core identity now is political, which I think is awful. I do not think that is a good identity. And it's made dating really bad. To the point where I just moved to the Washington D.C. area, and I've kind of braced myself for this because I've been through this once before when Trump was in office. But it's maybe I'll just date foreigners from now on, because I find that when I'm over in the UK, people, they just assume I'm crazy because I'm American,
Right.
and I'm fine. I don't mind people thinking I'm crazy. I mind people thinking I'm a shitbag. Like, I mind moral judgment, but I don't mind you thinking I'm nuts. That's fine. And so maybe I'll just do that. But yeah, dating is really affected by it. And I think it's a really bad idea. I think it's a really, really bad idea. One is a guy who would like to get married and have kids. Like, I would like to have, options. That would be good. And if I have to go with independent, libertarian leaning moderates, there are 8 of us. And the 7 of us are men who were former magicians. There's just not a big dating pool for whatever I am. So I have to go either direction, which I can. I don't judge you based on how you voted.
Yeah, you go out with a girl, and you pull some flowers out of your sleeve, and she's like, "Oh, you're just like the rest."
Yeah. Yes.
All you guys are the same.
You voted for Gary Johnson in 2016. But I would add, I don't want to try to get into other people's minds too much, but when I lived in New York City, it seemed to me that women in their late 30s were also finding dating to be difficult. I don't recall, the ladies that I talked to were dating is very hard for me. And I don't know all of the factors there, but I'm like, why would you want to cut yourself off from a potentially really good person? And again, I'd want to know the motivation. Like, if you were on a date with a Republican and you're like, why do you want to build the wall? And the Republican went, I love immigrants, but I'm very concerned with security, and I want to make sure that good immigrants are coming in and that drug cartels are not coming in. You could quibble about the efficacy of the wall or the funding and stuff, but the motivations there are pretty benign. Whereas if the guy went, oh, I hate brown people. I think America should be sure, you don't want to date somebody that's a white supremacist. I don't want to date somebody who's a white supremacist, but you could just going, oh, I don't think your policy is the right way to achieve your goal, or I think your policies may be a higher priority than I would put it. That's very different than you're a shitbag. And you could look around that. I've got lots of friends that are Bernie Sanders supporters, and as previously noted, I would put Bernie Sanders in charge of the economy if the economy got too big. If we ever had a conversation where we're like, the economy's just too big, we need to rapidly shrink it and make people thinner, then I would go, you know what, Bernie Sanders would be great. We should put him in charge of it. But I could be, when you talk to people, when I talk to my Bernie Sanders friends, they never go, I'm a control freak that just wants to exercise power over other people. That is not how they're thinking. They're literally not thinking. What they're thinking is, I really want to help poor people. I think greed is a very big problem, and I want the government to actively restrain greed. That's kind of something in that ballpark. And I'm like, I think that is a misunderstanding of how political economy works, but I appreciate that your incentive or your inclination is to help poor people. So yeah, I think it's been awful for dating. I'm feeling it I suspect I will date more foreigners. Let's go to embassy parties and find them. But I'm still open to American women, by the way. I'm not casting off the dust from my shoes. It's just I've been through this, and I've watched my friends in D.C. I was friends with a couple here in D.C. when I lived in New York, where they started dating. My male friend was a Republican friend of mine from back when I worked on the Hill. I don't know his exact politics, but he struck me as a fairly moderate Mitt Romney type Republican. I don't know if he's pro-life or pro-choice or not. He started dating a gal that was a Democrat, and they were fine. And they dated for 5 years, were living together. And then Roe versus Wade got overturned, and she broke up with him. And it's nothing has changed about this guy. Literally nothing's changed. He's not been radicalized. I know the guy. His politics haven't altered. But what changed was, well, now I'm at war with the Republicans, so I have to end this very meaningful relationship. It struck me as a waste.
Yeah, or some morbid thing. She's like, look, we've been dating for 5 years. I was really planning on us having an abortion. And now, now I just got to move on. But I know all of the, all the benefits of having a partner and being with someone that you want to be with, which really came to a head during the pandemic, during lockdowns, where there were a lot of couples who just didn't make it.
Yeah.
And then seeing people who are in their women and men who are in their 30s and want want to be with someone, and how lonely it could be, not having someone. And this other thing that I'm seeing too is,
howdy, I'm right here.
But one thing I have to say though, Andrew is definitely not a part of the manosphere online, where if you look at it, you're like, wait a minute, there are men who, there are lonely women, and these men who hate women and are like promoting all of these like lifestyles or ways of looking at the world to young men that involve like kind of ditching women and not being with women. And it's like, this isn't going to work. It's just, there's like, when I see posts by, recently it's like that Nick Fuentes kid or the Andrew Tate guy, and calling like, guys with wives who post about how much they like their wives, like gay. It's like,
wait, what?
It's like, yeah, what? What are you talking about? No, I genuinely like women. Like I don't love all women, but I enjoy being my friendships that I have, the women that I've dated in the past, being with my wife, I like, hang out. Like I like women. And the idea of sort of looking for any opportunity to rip into a woman, or to tear her down a peg. I just don't think it's healthy, especially if it's not warranted. It's not like just because you're a woman you're immune from criticism. No, but it's sort of like this just idea of woman. They're kind of just trying to ditch.
I'm 100% with you. I think I don't think bitterness is a good idea at all. I've had this conversation with several. Like I'm 40. I thought I would be married 10 years ago. I thought I would be like a goofy dad by now. So my life didn't go as I thought it was going to go. But I have very consciously and deliberately avoided becoming bitter because, one, I don't think that like women as a gender all had a meeting where they randomly went, let's be a dick to Andrew Heaton. I don't think that happened. And there's all sorts of stuff they're dealing with that I don't have to deal with that probably explains a lot of the behavior that I've not enjoyed in terms of online dating. Like, I don't know, they're a lot more worried about being murdered than I am. So I get why there are different dating strategies. But I'll talk, like, I've had a conversation with a few guys where they're hurt, they're wounded, and the response, understandably, is to become very angry at women collectively as a gender. And I'm just like, guys, this is a really bad idea. First of all, it's not going to make you any happier. It's not going to make you any happier, and it's only going to make your relationship corrosive. I'll flip it. Like being 40, I've met several ladies they've had bad experiences with men and they're angry at men. And I don't doubt, by the way, that they had truly bad experiences with men and their emotions are probably justified. But I'm like, I don't think the response you're having is very emotionally productive. Like I went on I was giving a tour to a couple of people last year in Edinburgh. I used to be a tour guide up in Edinburgh. And I was pointing out this one building that's very ugly, that's very anachronistic. It was made in like the year 2000. It looks like an overturned bug. And one of the ladies who was recently divorced went, well, I don't want to be sexist, but that's what you get when a bunch of men design a building. And I was like, well, the rest of the city that we were just ogling was also fully designed by men. In fact, I can make a pretty good argument that 99% of the pretty buildings you're looking at, because they were built in the 1800s, were only designed by men. Right. The bug building probably had some female inputs, just logically, but like she wasn't thinking. She was just mad about it, and it's part of a broader point that I see a lot. I'm very internally Mr. Rogers. That's kind of my emotional bearing here. I don't think contempt is ever a good emotion, and I don't think that dehumanizing people is ever beneficial. Dehumanizing people is only useful if you need to kill them. That's the only like it's useful to dehumanize people if you're in a war and you need to think of the Japanese as an alien group that has no personality. You don't think about their mom and their dad and shit. Then sure, if the goal here is just to kill people, dehumanizing them is a very useful tool. By the way, I'm not advocating that we should go kill people. I'm just saying, like, that's the only iteration I can really think of where it's useful. In all other instances, though, which is 99% of the interactions we have in life, dehumanizing people and figuring out ways to degrade them and say they don't really have full emotions, or full capacity. We're going to pathologize them. They're bad people. They're irredeemable. There's a very big difference between being wrong versus being irredeemable. None of that stuff helps. It's bad. It's bad for politics. It's bad for society. It's bad for you. Contempt is not a good state for you to be in, regardless of how the other people work. It makes you sad. It makes you bitter. It closes you off to good people that could otherwise fill your life with richness.
Amen. And you know what? I am thankful for you, Andrew, for joining me today. And I think that, I couldn't think of a better ending to this episode than that wonderfulness you just said. And please check out his book, Tribalism Is Dumb, where it came from, how it got so bad, and what to do about it. And I hope more people check out your book and check out all of your all the stuff that you put out there. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Lou. Can I make one more pitch on the book?
Yeah, do it.
So for people that have fallen in love with my dulcet baritone voice, this is on Kindle. It's paperback, as Lou is holding up, and I do it on Audible. So if you like Audible, I narrate the whole book. People enjoy that. They know me as a talking head. What I want to pitch in the book is, if any of the conversation that Lou and I just had resonated with you, of why are people being mean to me based on politics, or why are there fissures in my family based on politics, why are there dating, any of these things, right? I'm going to make a promise to you. The book is like $12 or $15. I promise you will understand why this is happening better than you currently do. By the end of the book, you will have a lattice work that explains where all this is coming from, and it will make it a little bit easier to go through because you'll at least know what's happening. So I think it's worth purchasing, and appreciate coming on the show. It's good to talk to you, Lou.
Likewise.